Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we are gonna talk about the week 3 and 4 Gladiator Circuit meta, because ultimately that is the meta that you kind of have to prepare your roster if you do plan on placing as high as possible in the season. That is again the meta that will matter more than the other one and will determine your final placement. So still, thankfully, in the off season we could practice playing in this meta, and I must say it is a fairly tricky meta because number one, the fights are made slower due to safeguard, so a lot of champions will effectively have their damage completely destroyed. Plenty of champions are unusable effectively, like Shocker and Morbius, champions that effectively, rely on a big burst of a single or double hit special attack. So it is trickier. Then we have Mixmaster. Obviously that evade is perfectly manageable until the fight goes right, until you keep everything in track in your head, which attacks you used before. But as soon as something starts to go wrong, that evade can become quite annoying. Now we can switch it off with the Light 'em Up node, where if we place Shock or Incinerate debuff on the opponent, we effectively switch off their evade and auto block. However, there's quite a bit of problem with that too, because, well, there are a lot of champions who are, let's say, allergic to Shock and Incinerate, who are extremely punishing when you do run Shock and Incinerate. So in my own personal experience, when I run something like Black Widow Deadly Origins, in theory she should be great because she has a lot of dot and burst damage and she has access to Shock, so she completely shuts down the evade. But in practice, when it comes down to going up against the meta defenders, she didn't really do too well. For instance, if you, try and use her against Serpent, well, it's tough pickings. If you try to use her against Bullseye, tough. If you try to use her against Onslaught, even tougher. If opponent drops a Havoc or a Bishop, awful, right? Will she do great against Thanos? Not really. So there is the problem. Can she do, Thing and Korg and stuff? Nope, not really. And so I quickly realized that when I drafted a couple of champions that does have access to either Shock or Incinerate, I ended up not using them at all, just because of the way the defense is kind of set. So we're going to go over some potential MVPs, and in general, skill class is going to be one of the most capable ones here. Now, I'll give several champions like special shoutouts that I have tested more in excess, but champions like Falcon could make a return. If you do have a big Falcon, he's going to be doing quite well because he will completely shut down the safeguard with a lock on and also the evade in most cases. Then we have, then we have Baron Zemo could actually be quite decent. But in general, the defensive ability, accuracy reduction champions will bypass safeguard very well. Even champions like Hitmonkey, because he does have access to bleeds, fairly large amount of moderate sized crits, and also access to disorient, so at times the safeguard will be bypassed. But in general, yeah, skill class is going to be very, very present and capable. Some of the champions that test out, Atuma is a significant threat on defense now, and that partially comes from the fact that, well, you just can't nuke him, really. So typically, opponents dealt with Atuma in two ways. They either had the perfect counter in form of like Negasonic and Shuri or Onslaught, which is fair and fine, or they just nuked him. You can't nuke him anymore, so he has significantly more limited counter options in general, so he can be a big pain. Korg can be an absolute defensive nightmare because you can't, again, shock him. If you try to incinerate him, he has a chance to shrug that off. And on top of it all, getting rid of his rock stacks without using, without an answer to the Mixmaster is a pain. So Korg is a menace on defense so far. Then we have Moleman, who works quite well offensively and defensively because he does have access to shock and also, lots of bleed dot damage, and he has his true accuracy at the beginning of the fight where you can kind of like position yourself up quite well, and he's decently good defensively too. Kate, obviously still fantastic. Her Cold Snap completely bypasses the safeguard and shuts down the evade because Cold Snap generally naturally shuts down their evade, so Cold Snap champions obviously do have value here too. And yeah, Kate is great in this meta. Then I have heard great things about Okoye, her being one of the better bullseye counters as well. And yeah, she's quite cool because unlike the most shock-reliant champions, she also has a contingency for that should opponents happen to be immune, and she can bypass the Mixmaster node just by dexing effectively and activating the ensnare, which, you know, works very well. Bullseye is much tougher as a defender again than he normally would be because of the safeguard. Again, if you can't get rid of him quickly, the chip damage adds up quite severely against you. The longer you are in the fight against Bullseye, typically the more chip damage you're going to end up taking. Now we have Silver Sable. I haven't tested her myself, but people are trying to use her. But Silver Sable, I'm going to talk the same as or similar as Black Widow Daily Origins. I am not sold in her matchups. Currently, I do have a rank 2 Black Widow Daily Origins in my deck, but she's on the chopping block fast. She's one of the champions that I am planning to take out quite soon. And then moving down, you have somebody like Red Skull. Because again, he does have access to shock, but you also have to navigate the Mixmaster with the medium light intercepts if you plan on using him offensively. Once you do get your first level 2 off, the fight is over. Basically, if you do get your level 2 quickly, he's going to do well. If you don't, it could be a problem. But the shock damage, the burst damage, everything else, you know, works quite well against Mixmaster. Against Safeguard. And overall, he has been fairly solid offensively, and obviously he's still a defensive threat. Then we have somebody like Warlock, which you can use quite well just to play around with Mixmaster, because he relies quite a bit on parries and heavies, and then you can do your medium light medium combos, and he still has his power control. So Warlock was very good. Omega Sentinel, she's a bit trickier to play, but does have access to that Incinerate and counters plenty of opponents. And also is better defensively, again, primarily because you can't really nuke her down. And she does have increased energy resistance. So, could be helpful on defense as well, aside from not getting nuked down. We have Jack, who's quite good at bypassing the Safeguard as well, by dealing his bursts of damage. Then we have Arcade, who has access to both Shock and Incinerate, as well as the corresponding immunities on defense. So he is quite nasty on defense and also offensively. You have Penny Parker, who, again, you kind of have to get to your level 2 and level 1, level 2 off, and then most of the damage is intact. She still maintains a significant amount of defensive value too. Even though the node with Shock can switch off her auto block, she's still quite an annoying champion to go up against, especially because it is harder to hit her block as well, because you cannot go medium light in the block or else she will evade. So getting her shield down is a slower process, and some of her best counters will not work properly either. Then you have Shuri, just, you know, pretty much built for this meta type champion. You have a ton of dot, which happens to be shock. You do not rely on massive hit damage, so Shuri is going to be great for this stuff. Mr. Sinister, again, still works great because it's quite easy to play around Mixmaster with Mr. Sinister, with you often relying on your heavy attacks. And then, obviously, your level 1 dot damage is going to function as normal. Onslaught, still the Chad. Negasonic Teenage Warhead, again, borderline picture build champion for this meta. Domino is quite good both ways, offensively and defensively. Number 1, because it's harder to nuke her, so she is more dangerous as a defender. And number 2, because her Unlucky also does have a chance to bypass the Safeguard, so you can get some massive crits off, as well as if you happen to get that critical bleed on, you're going to be a very, very happy guy. Moving on, Deadpool X-Force, again, just navigate the Mixmaster, and his damage remains intact, so he's quite decently good. Havoc here is primarily as a defender, because again, he becomes significantly harder to nuke, and you cannot shock or incinerate him, so you basically will have to deal with that evade, or use something, you know, that switches off away naturally, but that typically is in skill class, which isn't a great matchup. And yeah, you can also use him offensively, largely relying on his bursts of damage in select matchups or his heavy attack feedback damage. So he's still, well, he's not going to be a fast attacker, but he can kind of get the job done. Quicksilver is one of the few science champions that work quite well here, because he has amazing, effectively permanent access to slow, switching off that evade, so you don't have to worry about that. It doesn't hit hard enough for you to worry about Safeguard, really. and then his whiplash detonations will take the opponents down. So he's again solid offensively and defensively. We have Spider-Ham, one of the few science champions that were great as well, both offensively and defensively. He's better defensively, but skill champions are running around, so I still don't go overboard with science defenders. We have Photon, which is primarily a defender here. There isn't anything that, you know, excels her, aside from the fact that, again, it is kind of harder to nuke her without being able to bypass safeguard. But, you know, she's okay, I'd say. She's still worth running. Human Torch, I'm kind of going back and forth on this champion. Ultimately, I decided against using Human Torch because, number one, you cannot use your No Flames if you want to switch off Mixmaster. That kind of makes him slower and not being out of the 7-star, dealing with all the block damage. So at the moment, I did not have him in my deck. However, you can run him, you can use him to bypass Mixmaster if you do not activate the pre-fight. And he obviously bypasses Safeguard extremely well. We have Werewolf by Night, who's fantastic for this meta as well, especially because of his playstyle. You can just go medium light in the opponent's block or strike them directly. And then trigger your power gains, and, you know, all of that effectively bypasses Safeguard. You will have to fight with the Mixmaster, but with him, the way that the fight goes, and it's kind of slow playing, it's quite a bit easier to deal with Mixmasters than it is with many other champions. Kushala is one of the best Mystic options here as well. Get off your level 1, and you switch off the Mixmaster in matchups where that's not possible. You know, play with Mixmaster, go for level 2s. And obviously all of her damage pretty much is dot, so that's perfect. Then we have Spiral. I haven't tested out Spiral, but in theory she should be just about perfect for this meta, because obviously she does rely on dot in order to bypass Safeguard, and also she kind of thrives in an environment where you cannot execute repeated actions in order to gain more fervors, so that would fall in line with bypassing Mixmaster as well. We have Enchantress. Enchantress that's harder to nuke, that's a nightmare food for sure. And in a meta where science class is not too great, then in Cosmic class, Deathless Thanos, he has dots on his level 2, so he can kind of deal with that Safeguard. He will be slower than normal though, but additionally he is a menace on defense, so he's absolutely worth running. I primarily use him as defender at the moment in Battlegrounds though. You have Serpent, again more menacing as a defender, I would say. And we have Hyperion, probably one of the better Cosmic Offensive champions in this meta, because number one, he has access to Incinerate and therefore dot, and with that he can, you know, output quite large amounts of damage, and yeah, works quite decently well. Venom is a solid option that I have been personally running too. Looking at some other potential Cosmic options, I'm not entirely sure how well would Scream work, but I think she should be quite good too. With her dots and damage differentiation. Besides that, you know, Null could be quite decent with his degen and bleed damage. And that's kind of just about it here. That is at the moment where I am at with the meta. My deck largely consists of the champions that I just showcased as well. 1 second, my phone was acting up earlier, but I will show it to you guys too. It is going to be on the trickier meta sides though, because Safeguard naturally just slows down the meta. One champion they absolutely had to talk about, but it didn't so far, is Crossbones. Run from this man. Dread him. He is evil in this meta. Crossbones is an auto ban for me, especially when I see rank 3 Crossbones running around. I personally am not in love with the Crossbones playstyle, and I find him a bit finicky to use, but I've seen what this guy does. He's a menace to society, and you should get away from him. Right, so here we go. We do have effectively the Quicksilver. We're going to split it off by classes. So currently in Science class, I'm only running 3 Science champions. Should be Quicksilver, Spider-Ham, and Photon. Then skill class, again, we are at 7. At Tumor great. Moleman, Kate, amazing. Bullseye is still there. Again, Black Cat and Black Widow Daily Origins. I'm quite possibly going to take either one of those or maybe both of them out. Then we have Mutants. Weapon X is likely going to go out. I do plan on taking Negasonic to rank 3, I believe. And I'm going to be adding in Deadpool X-Force for Weapon X. because I figured it could be quite cheesy to try and Weapon X with the constant evades and him going unstoppable, but the safeguard just kind of hurts him too much. So there we go. These are my mutants. Cosmics, as advertised. Medusa is, there as well. Her damage is significantly gimped for sure too, but she's great at bypassing evade because of her true accuracy and sig ability, and then dropping level 2 with plenty of bleed still does decent amount of damage. This is my current tech lineup, and then here are my current mystics. So obviously this is still subject to change. The season has not started yet. It's going to start in half an hour from now, and then we're going to have to wait a couple of weeks till we actually get to this meta. So at that point, I will post an update on the way my deck looks like then. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all been